important event as far as my family was concerned.
Yes.
My father and mother, my mother especially, absolutely hated Palestine. They just detested it.
Mm-hmm.
And my father was, I think my father was relatively comfortable, but the climate was something, being a hardworking, physically hardworking person, he suffered. He just wasn't comfortable either. And so they decided to go back. And my father also chafed under the fact that, the business which he had built from nothing himself to some size had been lost in this very ignominious manner. And they elected to go back to Austria, and they went back on the first transport they went to Egypt and went back to Vienna. And UNRWA were repatriated by UNRWA, United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Agency, which was very prominent after the war in the repatriation of refugees from various parts of the world. They went back there also so just before I left the army, they were back in Vienna, the beginning of 47. And I was then in Germany, and I was able to go, and so I went there as soon as I could, laden with supplies, all kinds of contraband, cigarettes
Can you
mostly.
describe that reunion?
Yes, I will try. Let me give you another thing. Another little vignette of my life. I think it's important to describe my relationship with my parents during that. We were separated for 8 years, rather crucial years in a person's development from 15, and I saw him again when I was 23. They were, of course, were destitute. I mean, they had absolutely nothing. I mean, and they said so, and they just wanted me to know that it was very difficult to buy even food and stuff at first. And I say this not because I did it as a matter of course. I didn't even think about it. I was given a little pocket money by my English sponsor, guarantor, to buy candy, whatever. And I did not spend that money. I saved that money, and when I had saved £1, which was a lot of money in those days, when you got a shilling a week or something, or whatever money I could get here and there. Maybe it was 10 shillings, or maybe it was just 5 shillings. When it was an amount for which you could buy a postal order, it was probably 5 shillings more likely. I would buy that and send it to my parents. And they thought that was just, everybody heard about that. And I thought nothing of it. I mean, it wasn't a matter of feeling guilty for having abandoned them. I just did it as a matter of course. And I guess they felt pretty good about that. So that was I had established. So that was the kind of relationship I had established with them. In other words, a financially supportive one. This went on until they said, "You really don't have to do this anymore. We're okay now." But it went on maybe for a year or two, at first, when they got there. And it was actually interesting, in the light of my unselfishness, of my selfishness as a youngster, just to get not caring a great deal. I said it might have been a subconscious atonement, but it doesn't really matter. I think it was highly appreciated by them, not just for the money, but for the thought behind it. And I never thought much about it. I mean, I never thought it was such a big deal. Probably because candy wasn't that important to me. I don't know. When I went back there, I was sort of laden with, stuff which had value there, like cigarettes, were extremely useful things. And I think it was a very warm reunion. Very shortly after they had arrived, they lived under very reduced circumstances, and I stayed in the British Officers Hotel in Vienna, which was pretty fancy. And they were not allowed in there, you see. It was still it was still wartime regulations. I could not go out with them anywhere. I mean, I could visit them. I mean, but they could not come and see me in this fancy establishment. And but I helped them greatly with the stuff I had brought.
So they were in a little apartment somewhere in
Oh, I
Vienna.
had in a room,
In a room.
basement room somewhere. Yeah.
So what was it like when you first saw them?
Well, it was rather depressing, you know, because by that time I was living rather high. You know, I'd lived a very, you know, high standard. Had gotten used to a very high standard of living, and I saw they lived in some squalor, to put it mildly. Actually, they lived with the common law wife of my late uncle.
Mhm.
Okay, who was not Jewish. A very faithful woman, and who had sort of put him up, gave him, you know, it was pretty awful, really. But the most significant event which occurred was